Every breath you take, every step you make, walking on the moon. That's a bit of a medley by the police there. So every breath you take, it's just oxygen in your astronaut suit. And how about the pressure? Just look into how much pressure the astronauts had. So-called astronauts in their so-called astronaut suits. I think it's about a third of what we actually enjoy here at, I'm not saying I'm at sea level, but, you know. And if it's just oxygen, it'd actually make you ill. But they don't, of course, they didn't tell you that. They don't tell you that. They don't want you to know that. And what's important when you breathe isn't oxygen, it's air and the pressure of that air. So your lungs can fill to capacity. If you don't have that pressure, you will struggle. So when you listen to the so-called astronauts and they're jumping about on the moon, on wires, of course, they're not out of breath. They never worry about a thing. They're so relaxed. Oh yeah, I could die at any moment if my suit explodes, which it should do actually. It should have blown up like a hot air balloon, so you can hardly see the arms and legs, and probably gone bang. But that makes it very delicate, likely to be punctured, and therefore the occupant would die. Now, I don't know whether you know, but they only tested one astronaut suit in a vacuum chamber, and guess what? The astronaut nearly died. And they didn't do it again. They just sent them up there. So that alone is good enough to know that they didn't go to the moon. But the massive, obvious thing, the reason why I know, I'm not guessing. There's no, I wonder if they did go. No, they didn't go to the moon. And that is, if that's the Earth, and all around it is a vacuum, then where's the barrier keeping the water and the air from dispersing into that vacuum in every direction? And it would do it at the blink of an eye. It would be gone. So it's bullshit. And how the fuck did it get there in the first place? It's bullshit. There has to be a barrier if there's a vacuum. No, I don't think there is a vacuum. So it's not necessary for there to be a barrier, not a physical barrier. But I don't know. And I don't think really anybody knows that. But I may be wrong about that. Some people may do actually know what it is. But that's the reason they didn't go to the moon. Now, there's so many glaring, obvious failings to this Apollo moon mission bullshit. And the vacuum chamber, as you know, the astronaut suits could not be in a vacuum. The astronaut nearly died when they tried it, and they didn't do it again in their vacuum chamber. Went to all that expense to build a vacuum chamber, and all they do now is, well, bullshit in it. You know, dropping the, was it some spanner and a feather? It's all bullshit, people. So, of course, they didn't go to the moon because the vacuum of space, which they say they flew in. Well, there you go. Rockets cannot be propelled in a vacuum. If you think they can, do a little experiment, and you'll find out that they can't. So there you go. They can't get there. How the fuck did they stop? Did they throw a brick out the window with a piece of string on it? See, in a vacuum, there's no resistance. So you can't put the brakes on. You can't put air brakes on. You can't put like extended fins or big, like solar panel discs. And it's not like an aeroplane that actually works in air pressure. That means you can steer a plane just with rudders and ailerons and well, that's all you need really. That's it, yeah. But you can't do that in a spacecraft. So they apparently went past the moon and then went like round it back again. So why didn't they just carry on? Why didn't they? Oh, it was the gravitational pull of the moon, was it? Well, why didn't it just gravitationally pull them and bang? It's total bullshit. So for a start, the vacuum of space is obviously not there. Rockets can't work in vacuums. The spacesuit would not support a human life in a vacuum. The lunar lander looks like something that they constructed on Blue Peter in about, I don't know, I'll give them 10 minutes. And if you see any footage of them on the moon or photographs, there is the old, and it's undeniable, there's the old front screen projection going on, whereas the foreground looks kind of different to the background. Quite radically different. And I can't believe that people didn't see through it. Well, I know that a lot did, actually. A lot did. I've said about my great granddad, and somebody made a biography of his, not a long stretched out one, but just like a few thousand words, because he was quite a character. And now, of course, I would have had one of the four great granddads. So it's just this one in particular was a bit of a character. I did know him, but he died when I was 16, so I didn't know him that well. Because of course, that time he was quite deaf. He didn't see that well. But in 1969, when they professed to go to the moon, he said, "There's no way there's anybody on that moon." He said, "It just looks like they're in a quarry somewhere." And I thought that was in his biography. They were his words. So they didn't fool everybody. And he died when he was 93 in 1981. So you do the maths, work out how old he was when the old people, they weren't subject to all this bullshit programming, and it's just getting worse. So they didn't have to they didn't believe I can't say most of them, but a vast amount of those people did not believe, because they couldn't see it. They'd probably never seen Doctor Who, and they had no interest in Star Trek, and God knows what else. So it's very difficult to fool somebody. Now, these days, of course, unless people wake up, they could remake. Oh dear. When they say they're going to go to Mars, of course they could just film it all in that huge, bigger than 30 football field size studio that NASA have, with a green screen the size of a cliff face. They could just film it in that facility and make it look just like all the shit movies. And then people would say, "Oh yeah, they're on Mars. They've been to Mars. Blah 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 blah. Blah. Monsters on Mars." Yeah. Because they are that stupid, potentially. But when you snap out of it and realise that there is no vacuum of space, rockets can't work in space, you morons, and then you can see through the bullshit. Everybody who knows we're not living on a spinning ball sees right through it. You're offered something from NASA. You know it's fake. You know it's fake, but you can see it's fake. That's the thing. In old movies, when they're driving a car and it's a screen behind them, who was fooled by that? Well, people were fooled by it. When you see, sometimes a western, and they're on a horse, and they're riding along, and there's a tribe of very disgruntled Native Americans. Well, they called them Indians back then, didn't they? Shooting arrows at them and all that. And yeah, it's just a film, and it's a screen behind them, and they're just on a false horse. I've seen that. And as we grow and see through these illusions, each generation aren't fooled by what was fooling the generation previous to them. So I can look at the moon landings now, the footage, the photographs, and look, even before I knew that we didn't live on a spinning ball, that realization hadn't come to me. But I knew that they hadn't been to the moon. I knew rockets didn't work in space. I knew that all the photographs and film, the footage, was all faked. It's so easy to see through that. So easy. And the old NASA films are just so easy now to. You can almost smell the bullshit off the screen. So what are we going to have next? Are they going to go to Mars? Pretend to go to Mars? Are they going to film that and just more fakery for the generation now who are so into just watching screens? Hey dear, I do. I just wish people would just snap out of it, and you don't have to live your whole life looking at a screen, a television, a computer, a telephone, a tablet. For fuck's sake, there's a. I love walking and nature, and that's the screen is might have got a huge screen, the biggest you'd ever see, and that's what I like. But I'm not saying you should be like me. No, you should not be like me. You can avoid it, but there's much more to life than staring at a screen and tapping buttons, because that'll be the downfall of the human race, in my opinion. Okay, now lighten up a bit. I'm going to include a bit of footage that I took not so long ago, just 3 or 4 days ago, I think. And I was up in the morning, and the sun had just risen, and I was outside. Well, I went outside. I thought I'll run back into the camera. The sun had just risen, and the moon. Now I didn't. Well, I described it when I was filming it, but the wind noise was so bad. I just put some narration on it instead. But I forgot to say that the Terminator line on the moon. If you look, see where that is, and then you take a perpendicular line from that, that should give you that should point to the sun. And of course, it doesn't. And the other glaringly obvious thing is the shadow on the moon is said to be caused by the Earth. Well, how can that be if the sun is over the horizon and the moon also? So the sun has just risen. It's late November, and I'm not using the audio that I got from the footage because there's too much wind noise. But I then swing round to the moon, which is, the sun's just risen, as I said. If you look at the angle of the moon, there's no way, one, it could be lit by the sun, and two, that the Earth could possibly be causing that shadow. And again, that's just my opinion, but I'm just using logic and my own observations, which, frankly, you must do. Don't live by the rules of the lawgiver. So, oh, but you've got to look at it from outer space. No, I live on the Earth. I don't live in outer fucking space. There is no such thing. So don't give me that shit. I'm observing it from the place that I live, which is called the Earth. And how the people accepted that, the explanation that the Earth casts a shadow and it's curved like the Earth is supposed to be. I just can't understand how people can be so gullible. I think I've said this before, and I'm not having a go at him. You know, I would have probably fallen for the same thing. But I once said to a lecturer at Cambridge University, I said, "Have you seen the new version of the Bible, the dictionary? The word gullible has been removed." "Oh, really?" And he was flicking through it, and I was laughing. So he stopped flicking through it. It's so easy to fool people, but it's very difficult to explain to them, to convince them that they have been fooled. I know it's an old saying, but it's so true. Anyway, I must go because it's it's going to be too long. People won't watch it. See ya.